Hey, my name is Jem Hall, and I decided that I was going to wear my most ridiculous outfit for this artist talk. I'm the illustrator of the book Green Glass Ghosts, which was written by Rae Spoon and published this month, May 2021, by Arsenal Pulp Press, which still feels very surreal to me. The original illustrations that I created for the book are currently on display at the Penticton Art Gallery in full color, which are printed in the book in black and white, so it's kind of a nice window into seeing where the artwork started. This is my very first art show in a gallery setting, and it is also my first artist talk. Though I've been making and sharing my work in not gallery settings for a long time, usually in the form of personal gifts, zines, and in DIY spaces for many years. So I'm going to start by talking about how I met Rae and how we came to be working on this project together. Uh, this project wouldn't exist without our friendship. So yeah, I met Rae about 10 years ago when I was living in Montreal. One of the first things I really appreciated about Rae, other than their very snarky sense of humor, is that I've always known them to use their voice and their platform to support other artists. It seemed to me like Rae had like a running database in their mind of like every broke trans person from coast to coast that they'd ever met, and at every opportunity they could, they would offer work to us. So that's really how we became friends and collaborators. Um, Rae first approached me about this particular project when I was living in Halifax, and they had hired me to work the door for one of their shows. And initially, we talked about me designing some album art for them, but shortly after that, they told me about this idea for a book they wanted to write. Because we had parallel stories around traumatic childhood experiences, displacement, queerness, transitioning, then realizing we were non binary, living transiently, living with addictions, and also choosing to become sober, it felt like a really natural and exciting idea to help them tell their story visually. I felt like I'd been to all the places they'd been to in the book, and like I could see them and sense them and feel them really viscerally. Um, our stories definitely aren't identical, but we do have a lot in common and have also followed some similar migration patterns. So, yeah, that was like 6 or 7 years ago, and we've both lived in multiple cities and lived through what my mother would call some very pivotal character building experiences since then. Um, we've both struggled with the concept of home and family and accessing housing and physical and mental wellness and breaking free of cycles of abuse and also the deaths of important people in our lives. Rae has been incredibly patient and persistent and trusting of our process in this collaboration. It's taken me years to complete things, and because of the realities of my physical and mental health, and the fact that I live so transiently, flexibility has been very key in supporting this work to exist. It's incredibly rare and unusual to find someone as established and prolific as Rae who also has the time and space for that kind of process. So I'm very grateful for that. We became more focused on this particular project and closer as friends when we both found ourselves living in Victoria. And a mutual friend of ours, Vic Horvath, passed away. For me, the project became a way for us to hold our grief and also to honor the lives of many queer and trans people we know who struggle to survive every day. In some ways, our collaboration has really felt like Rae inviting me into the world of the working artist and encouraging me and supporting me to understand that my work is worth sharing with the world, that representation of people like us is important, and that there are people out there who will want and need to see and hear our stories. In other ways, it's felt like both of us encouraging each other to really see our pasts and histories not as failures or problems, but really as a valuable part of who we are. I'll speak to my artistic process a little bit. So, with this work, it was very contingent on traveling for me. I was born in so called Canada, and I'm also of mixed Romani and British heritage. I've moved around pretty consistently throughout my life. I think I've moved over 30 times in my 35 years. The pandemic and my disabilities have impacted the way I live, but there's something very spiritually and culturally important to me about movement and travel. I feel very called to move along seasonal cycles and to visit the same places at different points of the year, which all hold fractured pieces of home and memory for me. There are so many stories tied to place. And in order for me to reach back to the feeling of what it was like for me when I was that age that the main character of Reading Glasgow was, I actually needed to travel across the country to visit and speak to and channel those memories. I went on a very pivotal road trip with my friend Kalila from the West Coast to the East Coast after not having traveled that route since I was about 19. Um, I really believe that the land we move across holds stories. And I also believe that we can integrate and actually heal parts of ourselves that we may have neglected or abandoned through practices like this. I'm also very moved by seasons and ecosystems that I see humans as being a very small part of. And when I create art, a huge part of my motivation is the desire to honor the land and living things, spirits, seasons, and the people whose territory I'm moving across. I'm no way an expert on doing so, but I have a lot of curiosity and interest in that kind of way. Um, I'm also interested in knowing and researching the indigenous history and present day stories and protocols of the places that I move through. Um, at the end of that trip through a series of events, I became unhoused and I ended up back in the downtown east side, actually living exactly one street over from where the main character in the book ends up living at the end of the story in a very similar kind of building. Um, I also spent a lot of time in this neighborhood when I was younger, and I needed a lot of time to heal before returning here, but now it feels very right for me to be back here in this place that's so familiar and holds so much of who I am, and in a big way serves as one of the settings of this book and this body of work. I hear a lot of very talented writers and artists kind of talk themselves out of creating and sharing work due to fears around how it's going to be received. And for me, I need to create work for myself or to honor a particular story or experience that wants to be witnessed rather than creating something for an audience. Creating art is essential to my survival in this way, and I know that for Rae, telling stories through writing and music is essential to their survival too. It's a big part of how I process my experiences, how I build relationships, how I set goals. Um, and these goals are the things that help me want to continue to keep living. And it's one of the big ways I know how to give back to the people in my life. I really believe that everyone has a story to tell, and that story doesn't have to be for everyone. Before I was kicked out of art school, thankfully, I was told that my work was too niche, too based in my own experiences and identity, and that I'd never be an artist, or at least not with any success, until I learned how to make work that was more appealing to a broader audience. And I understand and totally respect that as a way to do things, but that's just not a way that I can create art. Um, I don't even believe that I'm the sole creator of my artwork. It feels much more like a force that moves through me that I try to translate. It also does not exist in a vacuum. It's a collage of all of my influences and experiences, and something that very much feels like I channel it from somewhere else. I'm really open to having conversations about ways I can improve my work or challenge myself or be more sensitive or considerate to others' experiences or where I'm treading. But at the end of the day, I do this because it helps me stay alive. I owe so much of my survival skills as an artist and just as a person to all the broke queers, femmes, survivors of abuse, trans people, disabled people, drug users, sex workers, ghettoized and racialized people who have always had show up in my life like guardian angels since I was very young. These are the people who treat me like I'm a human being, who see me as a person who has value. And these are the people who've had so much empathy and compassion and patience and love for me, and who've modeled and taught me how to hustle my gifts and talents to get by. Being an artist is definitely not an easy road to walk in life unless you're like independently wealthy, and even then I've heard some complaints. um, Thinking about artists I'm inspired by, some of those people are Sybil Lamb, Christy Rode Carrera, Vaginal Davis, Will Monroe, Sherry Boyle, Brontes Purnell, Sad Maynard, Marcus Cyrus Ware, Delane Labasse, Tony Gottliff, Melanie Monteceros, Selma Selman, Jasmine Yvonne Tile, Kiki and Ilva, who do the Living Altar, and C. Swice. The first piece I created for this body of work was the cover image for the book, which I didn't know would be the cover image at the time. It's of an alley in my neighborhood, which I illustrated when I lived in a different city and I was visiting. Um, and when I was making it, I really just thought about all the times I'd been in that alley and alleys like that at different times in my life. Getting drunk, making out behind bars, wheat pasting posters, tagging up dumpsters, pissing behind trucks, sleeping in doorways, getting high, feeling like I was gonna die there, falling in love, feeling more alive than I ever had, the electricity buzzing through them, bouncing off the power lines that are everywhere, uh, being woken up by the birds chirping and delivery drivers pulling up through the alleys at the back entrances of the venues, walking through them to avoid being harassed on the busy sidewalks, and also because it's just where I feel the most comfortable. And all the beautiful crows and hungry rats and their feathers and bones that lie in the street after they've decomposed or been picked dry, and all the winding blackberry brambles and protective rose bushes that grow up through the cracks in the cement there, and the sounds of people yelling and laughing and crying, the smell of death, the loud trucks coming in from the port, and the dust they kick up in the air that gets in your eyes, and the salt in the air from the sea, and the static that I feel so thick that is simultaneously so familiar and comforting and also so crushing and heavy at times to breathe in. And then the mountains in the distance holding ground. Another piece that stands out to me is the illustration of the brick tunnel with the night spilling out of it like an ocean. This is the part of the old brick house bar. And for me, it felt like illustrating what it feels like to have the catharsis of hitting a point so low that you know will either kill you or it will be the catalyst for you to come back fighting for your life. There's an excerpt I want to read for you from the book that I think describes a moment like this. It was upside down. Beauty was all around me now, but I felt apart from it. Questions floated up in front of me. For a moment I ducked, as if a hand were coming from the sky to hit me. Why couldn't I live a day without thinking about dying? Why was I hurting other people? How could I stop hurting myself? Does being hurt turn you into the same kind of person as the one who hurt you? I needed to get away from myself. I wanted to shed my body so I could become someone new. But there was nowhere I could go where I wouldn't still be myself. Maybe if I were more perfect, people would love me. But I felt like I was 10 dogs on a leash, and once in a while I would lose control. Suddenly I heard a snap, like a piano string breaking, like a ligament tearing. I erupted, punching and kicking the water. The white-hot rage that I carried poured out like lava into the ocean for I don't know how long. It turned out that the void had no more answers than the recently abandoned Pentecostal God of my childhood. I only stopped thrashing when I felt close to drowning, heaving for air. I floated up onto my back, the same person still. As I walked out of the water, the wind blew warm across my body. I collapsed onto the sand next to my clothes and lay with my arms crossed over my face, waiting for my breath to slow down. The sun was already drying the beads of water all over my body. I saw myself standing on the window ledge again. I almost hadn't made it to this day, but my body kept breathing without me asking it to. I just had to keep going. So I have some final thoughts, which are basically, if this book can be held by someone who sees a fraction of their experience reflected, I'll be very happy. And if it reaches someone who doesn't see their story here, but it either helps them understand someone else's experience or inspires them to want to tell their own, that would make me even happier. Thanks for joining me today.